Okay. Hello, my name is Augustine, and today I'm refuting Jennifer's speech on genetically modified organisms, or GMOs. The claim I'm responding to is hers, which is genetically modified crops can be beneficial and may be of great interest to both consumers and farmers alike. Her secondary claims are that 1, agriculture may be engineered to be more resistant in attempts to make food more sustainable. 2, GM crops can be altered to enrich nutrient for nutrient deficient populations. And 3, food that is genetically altered can potentially eliminate allergic reactions. So to her first claim, I have a couple of counterclaims. The first claim, just as a reminder, is that agriculture may be engineered to be more resistant in attempts to make food more sustainable. Jennifer gives an example of the papaya and how it's able to fight off viruses and ensures that the crops survive, but this can also be a problem. The resistance only lasts for so long. Sooner or later, the viruses adapt and they become stronger. In an article titled 10 Reasons to Avoid GMOs by Jeffrey Smith, who founded the Institute for Responsible Technology and who is also credited with improving government policies, states that between 1996 and 2008, U.S. farmers sprayed an extra 383 million pounds of herbicide on GMOs. Overuse of Roundup results in superweeds resistant to the herbicide. This is causing farmers to use even more toxic herbicides each year. Not only does this create environmental harm, GM foods contain higher residues of toxic herbicides. Roundup, for example, is linked with sterility, hormone disruption, birth defects, and cancer. Furthermore, in another article titled Arguments for and Against GMOs, it states that GMOs are a serious risk to the environment. Their seeds will travel well beyond fields where they are grown. Cross-pollination creates herbicide-resistant superweeds that threaten other crops and wild plants. And this is similar to overuse of hand sanitizer and how that creates super germs that slowly become resistant to it. And this just further shows that there needs to be more research done. In response to her second claim, which is that GM crops can be altered to enrich nutrients for nutrient deficient populations, which is known as biofortification, Jennifer mentions golden rice and how it was able to support more people due to enriching its nutrients. And although that sounds great, there's still a problem with that, and that is the acceptance by other people. You're putting a new product out into the market, and it's not going to do well if people don't accept it and if farmers don't use it. In an article supporting GMOs by the International Service for the Acquisition of Agrobiotech Applications, they state that a successful biofortification strategy requires widespread adoption of the crops by farmers and consumers. And this presents several important challenges. Public acceptance is also essential, especially if the new trait changes perceptibly the qualities of the crop, such as color, like in golden rice, taste, and dry matter content. So this states a possible problem, so I decided to do some more research to see if this problem was true. I found a study done in mid-2015 which shows how people feel about genetically modified organisms. The survey was conducted by Lee Rainey, the Director of Internet Science and Technology at Pew Research Center, and also Carrie Funk, the Associate Director of Research on Science and Society at Pew Research Center. Their findings found that a minority of adults, only 37% say that eating GM foods is generally safe, while 57% say that they believe it's unsafe. And most are skeptical about the scientific understanding of the effects of genetically modified organisms. About 2/3 of adults say scientists do not clearly understand the health effects of GM crops, and 28% say scientists have a clear understanding of this. So this presents a problem with GMOs and just altering their nutrients. It's clearly not accepted by people, and more work needs to be done with that. For her third claim, which is that food is genetically altered can potentially eliminate allergic reactions, I have a reasoning claim as well as a counterclaim. She starts off her argument by saying how GMOs do cause allergic reactions due to new proteins, but she also gives us an example of how the allergens in peanuts are removed. Shortly after that, she kind of downplays her own statement by saying that more research needs to be done to get a method to completely extract certain genes to prevent allergens. And for a counterclaim to show that more work does need to be done, in the article Arguments for and Against GMOs, they state that mixing up plant genes can also threaten allergy sufferers, like when Brazil nuts were crossed with soybeans. GMOs increase resistance to antibiotics, making medicines less effective. Fears have been raised over possible links to cancer, reproductive malfunction, digestive disorders. Nobody knows the long-term effects. And this is true, there are no real insights to long-term effects, but we are able to kind of foresee what can possibly happen, and this is shown in the article, one second, I'm sorry. Oh, man. In the first article I mentioned, let me just double check. By Jeffrey Smith, sorry about that. He says that tampering with crops' genetic makeup impacts down the food chain. Scientists say that GMOs have decimated butterfly populations in the United States or led to birth defects among other animals. By the time we find out the long-term impact, it could be too late. Continuing off of that, he also says GM crops and their associated herbicides can harm birds, insects, amphibians, marine ecosystems, and soil organisms. They reduce biodiversity, pollute water resources, and are unsustainable. For example, GM crops are eliminating habitat for monarch butterflies, whose populations are down 50% in the US. Roundup herbicide has also shown to cause birth defects in amphibians, embryonic deaths, and endocrine disruptions, and organ damage in animals, even at very low doses. So, although using GMO seems like a good idea, more research does need to be done to make it more acceptable by people and safer for everyone. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
All right, all the structural stuff is fine. On the first point, basically you're going to be arguing a counterclaim concerning how viruses could adapt. You make an analogy ultimately to like the hand sanitizers. You have a source that you cite that mentions these possibilities. I don't know that there's a lot of proof on it, just a suggestion that these kinds of things might be happening. It's the same source that you use on the last point. It's very conclusionary, by the way, on the last point about the link to the butterflies disappearing. I guess that's a habitat issue more than anything else. And if it's a habitat, then I think you need a clearer link on that. I thought you did a good job, by the way, on the second point, so I'll get to that one in just a second. You had a more complete link to that particular harm. The notion that there would be residues that could be potentially problematic, I think that that's a presupposition. There's not really any discussion of the advocate's evidence or reasoning on this point. It's mostly the counterclaim. On the second point, I think that you have a good counter-argument here talking about the problem is that these sorts of products have to be widely accepted and integrated, both by the growers and by the consumers, and then you show that they are not likely to get that kind of acceptance. So I thought the follow-up on that was pretty strong and gives us a reason to believe that your original point there is true. On the third point on allergies, I thought that you had a good counterclaim, except that your evidence and examples, the vague reference that you have to the nuts, the Brazil nuts and the peanuts, I don't know what that was. You need to explain that. Like I said before, the link on the butterflies, I think there's a little bigger presupposition there that I'm not exactly sure I would be comfortable accepting at this point, but I thought the counterclaims are good. You needed a little bit more direct analysis of the evidence and reasoning of the advocate, but your counterclaims I thought were solid. Thank you.